AP students. This is Wendy with AP History Help, and this is the AP History Help podcast, where you will learn everything you need to know about taking AP History classes, from skills to content, from historical thinking skills to themes in history. Whether you're taking or thinking about taking AP World History, AP US History, or AP European History, this podcast is for you. Be sure to check out the episode list and show notes to find the topics that you need help with. AP History Help is on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, where I am happy to answer your questions. There are certain themes or skills that you probably get sick of hearing about, but if you can master their meaning and how to use them when you engage with the content, you'll be in a much better position to ace the exam. For the previous 2 weeks, we've covered 3 reasoning processes. In episode 18, we talked about continuity and change. Last week was causation, and today we will be discussing the historical thinking skill of comparison. Before we dive in, if you haven't done so already, make sure that you go back and listen to some of those episodes, especially since those AP exams are coming up soon. APUSH and Euro are on May 10th, and AP World is on the 15th. I say it each episode, but I'll say it again. They're all on demand for your listening and or watching pleasure. By the way, the episode that will be released on May 6th is a very special one. I'm going to talk to you about the exam. It will be part review, part last-minute preparation, and part pep talk. Send me your questions by May 4th if you'd like me to answer them in that episode. You'll definitely want to watch or listen to it before you take your exam. And I've decided to end the school year with a wrap-up episode that reviews how the exam went. So once you take the test, shout out to me on Instagram or TikTok with how you think you did and any other details you want to share. Do remember, though, that the College Board has their spies watching social media for anyone who shares anything too specific. So no specific details, especially about the multiple choice questions. The written questions will be released 24 hours after the exam, so those you can be specific about. Lord knows I will be talking about them in the May 20th episode. Come in, students, take your seats. It's time for some AP History Help. Comparison. Easy concept, to be honest. It should be anyway. When you compare two things, what do you look for? What things are the same and what things are different? Often, you are only asked to look for similarities or differences, but doing both creates a more complex approach. Anyway, as I've shared before, let me tell you what College Board says about comparison. Listen for the subtle differences between the 3 statements. Describe similarities and or differences between historical developments or processes. Explain relevant similarities and or differences between specific historical developments and processes. Explain the relative historical significance of similarities and or differences between different historical developments or processes. I scoured the College Board curriculum and exam descriptions for each of the 3 history classes, and for each one, I want to give you an idea of where the word compare or comparison comes up, so you can hear how it's woven throughout each course. Are you taking another AP History class next year? Do you know someone who might be? The Success Planner for AP History students is an interactive planner that will help you to organize things in a way that you can reflect daily and see the big picture concepts and skills. This will be helpful to start the new school year out with. It is set up to be user-friendly, a weekly companion on your journey to acing the AP exam. I want you to be able to focus on the most important content each day, each week, the thinking skills that we cover in our class and in your AP classroom. And most importantly, you should always take time to reflect on the overall process of what you're learning and which skills you're developing. I've put a bunch of other little tips and tricks in there to help answer a lot of questions that I think you might have. I will put the link to purchase the Student Success Planner in the show notes, but you can also access it through the aphistoryhelp.com website, or head on over to Amazon and search on Success Planner for History Students AP, and it will be at the top of your search results. In AP World History, comparison is mentioned in the key concepts at the end of Unit 1. Comparison in the period from 1200 to 1450. Then in Unit 2, comparison of economic exchange. What were they talking about here? Economic exchange. Right, trade. So compare the trade routes: Silk Road, Indian Ocean trade, Sub-Saharan trade. I'm getting ahead of myself here. So at the end of Unit 3, comparison of land-based empires. One example could be to compare the methods by which various empires increased their influence from 1450 to 1750. Or later in Unit 6, compare the processes by which state power shifted in various parts of the world from 1750 to 1900. Or in Unit 8, comparing how decolonization happened from one place to another. Comparison in APUSH. At the end of Period 2, here you would be comparing the similarities between the different regions or colonies, as well as the relationship that the European countries had with their claims to land, as well as the indigenous people. Also, at the end of Period 5, which is Civil War and Reconstruction, you tell me, what do you think you'd be comparing in that unit? The North and the South, right. And after the war, still comparing North and South, but maybe also some political comparison in the plans for Reconstruction. And in Unit 7, which covers imperialism through World War II, compare approaches to imperialism, the two world wars, foreign policies, even comparing the significance of many events in this time period. And in AP Euro, we see in Unit 3, the last key concept is comparison in the age of absolutism and constitutionalism. Of course, you'll find yourself comparing absolute versus constitutional styles of government. You could also look at Unit 1 and compare the Italian and the Northern Renaissance, or looking at the 30 Years' War and comparing its religious and political motivations. That's right, already it's time for Wendy Teaches History. Sit back, students, it's time for a story. On this day, April 22nd in 1970, the United States celebrated Earth Day for the first time. Millions of Americans participated in rallies, marches, and educational programs across the country. Much like Uncle Tom's Cabin is seen as playing a pivotal role in the sectional divisions in the U.S. in the 1850s, Rachel Carson's book, Silent Spring, about the effects of pesticides, written in 1962, is often cited as starting the modern environmental movement in the United States. And Richard Nixon issued an executive order establishing the Environmental Protection Agency to regulate and enforce national pollution laws. Earth Day is celebrated around the world, although on different days, and the United Nations officially celebrates it on the first day of spring. To quote an early slogan, "Save your Earth, you can't get off." So how might you encounter the reasoning processes of comparison? Even though the historical reasoning process of most DBQs is causation or change, every time you're working on drafting your DBQ essay, you're comparing the documents and looking for differences and similarities in the way they respond to the prompt or help support and defend your thesis. As you read the documents, you should be thinking about how they are either similar and therefore they corroborate your evidence, or how they're different and modify or qualify your argument. And because everything is connected, that's one way, the old way, of getting complexity. On the AP World History 2023 exam, one part of one of the SAQs asks you to explain one way that Chinese cultural traditions influenced Asian societies in the period 1200 to 1450. You could argue that you need to determine who they influenced and compare them to decide who you'll choose. I know it's a stretch, but even when you don't overtly compare, you're often comparing to make the best decision. The 2023 APUSH exam also has part of an SAQ asking to compare two authors' interpretations of the American Revolution. In that case, you would read each text excerpt and determine how they are different and similar on the topic that they write about. And for AP Euro in 2021, one of the LEQs asks, evaluate the most significant cultural effect of the First World War during the period 1918 to 1939. This would seem to indicate that you have to determine more than one cultural effect to be able to evaluate the most significant of them. Want to see some sample responses to these prompts? I'm happy to share. Just message me wherever you like to do so. Instagram, TikTok, email, text, even at the AP History Help website. I'll share a sample with you for free. Just mention free FRQ comparison in your message and be sure to let me know if it's for AP World, AP Euro, or APUSH. Last, in case you're thinking, there doesn't seem to be as many comparison examples as there was causation and changing continuity, let me share with you some multiple choice examples. There is an excerpt from Abraham Lincoln's speech, and one of the MCQs asks, at the time of Lincoln's speech, the ideas expressed in this excerpt would have been directly opposed by, and then a choice of 4 names. The names are people you should know if you're taking APUSH. So in order to determine who might oppose Lincoln's views, you need to compare how each one felt about the topic Lincoln spoke about. Or in another question based on a map, a question asks what other historical development has led to the trend being depicted on the map. Now you have to compare the answer choices to the information presented in the map. And one last example. The question asks, the most significant economic result of this treaty was, and then 4 choices. That means that some, or maybe all of the answer choices were results, but you have to compare and decide which was the most significant. Consider one more thing about comparison. When you're asked to compare people, events, ideas, whatever, rate them on some kind of scale, political impact, social effects, whatever, and ask yourself, on a scale from 1 to 10, how much does A impact B? And that way, when you're asked about the most significant thing, or if you're asked to evaluate, you can indicate which is the most significant thing and why. We kept it short and sweet again this week. I hope you'll have a better handle on what comparison is, how to wrap your brain around its presence in history, and that you feel more confident in being able to answer a comparison prompt, whether it's a DBQ, an SAQ, an LEQ, or even an MCQ. Don't forget about that Student Success Journal. I'll link to it in the show notes, or just search for Student Success Journal AP on Amazon. If you're going to take another AP history class next year, buy one now while that price is still low. Hey, by the way, I would be so grateful if you would tell your friends who are taking or thinking about taking AP history classes about the podcast. I'm here to help as many students as possible to be successful in the course and on the exam. And be sure to join me before your AP exam for episode 21, the RPP episode, review, pep, prep. I'll be here to give you the last minute advice that you didn't know you needed, or maybe you do know, before the exam. And that will do it for this episode. Don't forget to come to Wendy for AP History Help. And this episode of the AP History Help podcast is now history.